everyone. Welcome to Dell EMC Networking Tech Talk with OpenManage Network Manager. This is for OMNM 6.5. This is Bill Acevedo, and today we are going to talk about device discovery. So in order to get devices into inventory, we got to discover them first. So let's just talk about that. Off the resources panel, you'll see we have a subtask or subpage here called Discover. So we're going to go into that. And the best place to start here is with Discovery Profile. What you're going to see here is authentications. Authentications are used as a place to log your credentials for your devices, but you can also create these authentications within the Discovery Profile. And once the profile is saved, they automatically get saved to the authentications. So let's just talk about a Discovery Profile here. Let me go on this other box here. Here we go. Okay, so I've created one here, but to create one, you simply do a right click and new, and to create a new one. I'm just going to show you one I've already created. It's the same screens, and so you come in and you give it a name of what you want. Typically, we find it useful to use like a subnet or an IP range in the name. That way, you kind of know what's in that particular profile without having to actually open it. And so there's various options here that you may be interested in. Device naming format. Typically, we're going to use what's a combination of the sys object sysname and the IP address. So this sysname is the Snmp value we get from the box when we go interrogate it with basic RFC 1213. But you can set the name any way you like. If you want to be, just sysname or just IP or hostname plus IP. So it's up to you there. If you want to manage just by IP address, you can do that. Or you can choose by hostname if you like. And so if you choose hostname, we're going to go ping the IP address or hostname. And when we save it, we're just going to save it as by hostname. And so it depends on how you want to see it in inventory. If you do want it to resolve host names, then just check this. It's by default. If you want it to ping the device first, obviously this is a default. That's the first thing we do is ping it when we discover it so we can see that it's there. But there are devices that don't respond to ping, but they're on the network. And maybe it's intentional that they don't want them responding to ping. So in order to discover those devices, you would simply uncheck this, and we would still go and try to do the next phases of discovery to detect that device. If you're doing a large subnet or a large range of devices, you may not want to get everything. And so you have options by filtering by location. And so this location here is basically there are basically sys locations that we get through RFC 1213 when we ask the box, what's your sys location? And so these locations become persisted in the product, and you can select by them later if you need to. And so if you need to do that, just be aware it's there. Also by vendor, if you have a big subnet and you only want your your N-series switches or your ForceTOS or FTOS or your Cisco's, you can filter those out by vendor. This next tab here for configure Snmp. If you're in an environment where Snmp has never been configured, especially large environments, you're basically, because Snmp is a required component of discovery, it becomes cumbersome if you have lots of devices that don't have Snmp. And so what happens here is we will attempt for limited device types to enable Snmp transaction. And so we will actually go out and turn Snmp on. And we'll take it one step further, that we will actually try to configure the Snmp values that you set in the next screen, which is basically the authentications that you're going to use. And so this is a way to get devices discovered that don't have Snmp enabled or configured. And so you would pick your device here, type, and then it would attempt to go out and do that. For the most part, you may not need that on. You can also filter by device type. If you're just looking for specific things, like a hub or a firewall or whatever it is, you could filter by that as well. Generally, you can leave those blank. If you do want to manage devices that only respond to ping, you would select this box. And if you do want to manage unclassified devices, you would basically check this bottom box. Now, this is a case where it'll make more sense when we talk about the discovery, when I talk about Snmp, the sys-object ID. And so every device and vendor has what's called a sys-object ID. It's essentially an RFC 1213 MIB value that explicitly identifies it as a Juniper, a Cisco, a Force 10, a Dell. Every vendor has their own unique identifier. And in some cases, though, what will happen is, let me just show you on another screen here what the sysobject ID looks like. Under driver information, this value here is what uniquely identifies models. And so if we can't get this value, it could be that the value is there, but we don't understand it. And so that's typically the thing where we talk about unmanaged devices. So if I have a model here and said, for example, if this is the C7400 and it's Cisco 6027, I'm sorry, FTOS 6027.1.2.2, and the device we're discovering is like a .20 and we don't have it. Well, it's basically a device that's not recognized by the driver as belonging to this vendor. And so that's where we get back to it being an unclassified device. We don't know necessarily what it is. And so you can still manage those as an unclassified device. You would only have Snmp access once you get it discovered. And there are cases where that happens, and then later on we can develop a driver, and then we can maybe turn it into a classified device, a normally discovered device. So a couple of things to remember there. But in order to discover, you simply come in here under your network tab and you select how you want to discover by site or address, host name, IP. If you hover over the IP address field, you'll see that there's options for what you can enter here. And you can see there's comma delimited IPs, dashes, even a /24 on the end in order to identify what you want. I've just got 3 here that are basically individual IPs. And then down below here is where, once you've identified your IPs, you want to identify what authentications you want to use. And so you can choose existing ones if you have them, but generally on a new install, you're going to want to create a new one. So you would give it a name. And again, the main thing that most devices need is a command line credential as well as an Snmp credential. So we would first come here and we'd select Snmp. Now it could be V1, V2, or V3. The most common is V2. And we're basically just going to give it the read string. And so it could be just some random, whatever your devices are configured with, whatever read string that is. And then write string is not real important. You can enter that here as well as trap. But for discovery, we only use the read part. But you would just put that community string in. And if you need to modify things like timeouts, this is where you would do it. If the device is responding slow, you could do that here. So you would create your Snmp. You'll see I have one here. Then the next step is you would go in and create your command line credential. And on that one, you have a choice of things like SSH, SSH-v2, Telnet. Those are generally the ones that devices use. And so you pick something here, provide those credentials, and then save them. Now, if you're discovering other type devices, for example, Linux servers, you can use WebM. If the device understands WebM protocol, just give those credentials and we'll go out and interrogate it. If it's a Windows box, you would use WMI. There's a few others here that are a little more involved, but those are the main ones that you're going to be dealing with. But once you get these devices in inventory, these authentications listed here, you're now ready to go and do your discovery. I'm gonna branch over here. I'm gonna do something real quick. I'm gonna delete a device, this box right here, just so we can show a discovery. I'm gonna refresh, it's gone. I'm gonna go back to my profile here, my demo, and I'm going to now execute this profile using these 3 IP addresses, including the one I deleted. What we want to do first, though, is we want to go to this inspection tab, and that's going to basically interrogate the credentials to make sure they're actually working. So I just want to go inspect here, and it's going to scroll through all those devices, and it's going to first do a ping, and then it's going to do a Snmp check for the model, and then finally it's going to see if Telnet is supported. And so as I expand this, the first 2 in my profile were already known, but I deleted this one device. But what you see here is that I've got various credentials listed. I had multiple SSH-v2s and multiple SNMPs. You can have as many as you need, and it will pick the one that works. And so you'll see here that it went through and it found that this SNMP worked, and then followed by this V2 worked. And it didn't try the others because it's already got a credential. So it finds the first one that works. If you have a large subnet, you can put in multiple different credentials types, and it will just find the ones that work. So this basically tells us that it's working. If it's not working, you'll see a little icon over here that you can click on, and it'll tell you exactly what went wrong, if it's an Snmp credential or what you might need to try, and then you can go back and try it again. I'll go to previous here and then retry things. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this is working. Before I get out of this screen, though, I wanted to show you this Actions tab. This is on here because these are post-discovery actions. After we discover the device, we're going to go run these actions. And there's some things here that are needed by default. One that's of note here is this enable Snmp traps. We're going to go try to automatically tell the device to send traps to OMNM so that you can automatically start getting traps. If you don't want that functionality, you can simply just hit the trash button here and delete that. Most of these others you're going to want to keep in here, but anyway, those are the kind of things it's going to try. So let's just go and do an inspect, or an execute now. Do a discover, and we'll see what a discovery looks like. And so you can also schedule these, as you notice in that last tab. If you want to have a subnet kicked off to discover and pick up things at any time, you can do that at any time. And so you'll see here there's some things that it is complaining about. But we can start at the top here and you'll see this is the first device, the 150. It's just going through a bunch of information. And obviously you don't need to stand here and look at it, but it did successfully discover that one. It did try to run this task. It did try to run this enable Snmp task, and it appears to have failed, and that could happen. It could be that the box has too many trap hosts configured and it won't accept the configuration. It's not a failure of discovery, it's just a failure of that task. So that's why I wanted to point that one out. But this is the kind of screen you'll see, things that it's reading, if you're interested in seeing what it's reading. And so you'll see that as we close this, we go back to our resources and we'll see that 150 device is back in there. And so here it is. You'll see here this network status. This is being reported off the ICMP monitor. Hasn't had time to ping it enough times to make sure that it's up. And at some point it will show responding, just like the other devices. And then I just wanted to show you again that you can schedule these profiles. You'll see here, right down here on schedule. And if you did had a large subnet you wanted to discover, every night, you can have it query that whole thing and it would pick up new devices. Okay, that pretty much wraps up our high-level view of discovery. I hope that was useful to you, and we'll see you on the next session.